Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by the lovely Juliette Bryant. Juliette is a superfood alchemist. She's a nutritional consultant and she's also an author, having written a great book about mushrooms, isn't it? Magic
Yes,
mushrooms
seven
or the
magical mushrooms.
magicals. Juliette, today we're talking a little bit about plant-based diet benefits for sustainable food supply. What are the most significant ways in which a widespread adoption of plant-based diets could positively impact the sustainability of our global food supply?
Well, that's a great question, and thanks for having me here. For me, a big part of being plant-based and my work as a nutritional consultant is the influencing of people to grow their own foods. Because it's very easy to grow plants that we can eat. It's super easy, and especially if we're organic. This is something that I've been doing a lot of interviews with people about the organic growing and the need for more veganic growing. So that's growing without any animal input, so not using manures, because that has such a huge amount of problem. And we've been experimenting in our home, in our garden. We don't have a big garden, but we've got raised beds in our garden, and we're doing what's known as a closed circuit growing. So we're creating our own soil, we're creating our own fertilizers using nettle and comfrey that we grow. So it's really beautiful to be able to grow your own food. And what's more exciting is things like the tomatoes and the cucumbers that we're growing are self-seeding themselves for the next year's growth. So right now in the greenhouse, I've got 20 tomato plants that have come up from last year's tomatoes.
Lovely. That's
Yeah.
great. I wish I had a garden like that. That sounds fantastic to be able
Yeah,
to just go in there and
it
yeah.
is amazing. And it's like, I have lots of things that come back every year that I don't have to do anything with, like ditanda, perpetual spinach, our chard. So we've got this large amount of food that we're able to supply ourselves with on a regular basis that just keeps coming back. And then with that, if you then add in the foraging aspect of what is in our local environment anyway, we can really harness so much nutrition from our environment, and then bringing in only small amounts from outside. Because obviously in this country, we have a limited growing season. Unless you've got polytunnels that are heated, we don't have a huge growing season. But we can dry things, and the more you can grow, the less you have to pull in from outside. So it's increasing this model of what we can grow, um, which then you do bring in your things like your lentils and things to top up what you've already got. And I think that's really what we need to look to do more.
Mm. Yeah, and actually, we were writing a little bit about inner city growing and how you can have allotments on rooftops now. This is a great idea. And we were also talking about how plant-based diet takes a lot less storage. So
Mm.
a lot of these things actually we can grow ourselves, and then the other things, like you said about lentils, we can get from outside. It doesn't need to be stored any with too much specifics on
Exactly.
on
We
the
don't need the
temperature.
refrigeration chemicals and all of that stuff to hold it. And especially if you're drying stuff, what we do, we dehydrate quite a lot of stuff. We're looking at building a solar dehydrator so we can start harnessing the power of the sun. Because when it is sunny in England, obviously in different parts of the world, I spent some time in Oroville in India, which is an amazing place, and saw the solar cookers they had there and the solar dehydrators. Incredible what some people are doing where they've got the weather to do it. But I know people in this country who are doing solar dehydration. So we're going to give that a go as well. Because I think if everyone starts to grow a little bit more and forage a little bit more, even those small steps reduces the scale of the stuff that we're importing in. And also a big part of it is the land destruction. One of the things that has really got me recently is all the solar panels that are going up on farmland in the UK and destroying land that could be used to grow very easily, and sustainably. You don't need to have livestock on that land. You can grow, or you could share that land out for allotments for people to grow more food themselves. And that
Mhm.
education, after this interview, I'm off to my local school to be running a gardening session, growing vegetables with the kids and talking about
Oh,
growing organically, because I'm working with the Vegan Organic Network to grow to teach in the school about growing without animal input, and the importance of that for the environment and also for the animals and for us.
Oh, that sounds like a really beautiful afternoon doing that with the children. But
Yeah.
what you touched upon then as well is about the use of land as
Mm.
well. So if we were to shift to plant-based, we would have more land available to grow all of these foods. So one more question I wanted to ask you more on a personal note is about your vegan journey. I just wanted to know a little bit about back when you first went vegan and what were those kind of first reasons?
So I grew up from the age of 8. We became pescatarian. So my parents cut out meat, and then I went vegetarian in my late teens, early 20s. And so then it was kind of a gradual progression. I didn't like eating animals, and so gradually it was cutting
Mm.
it out as I felt I could in society at the time. I think sometimes it's hard to make that big jump. um, and I remember the reason I actually trained as a nutritionist was because when I was pregnant with my first son, he's about to be 21, I wanted to bring him up as a vegetarian. So not as a vegan, but as a vegetarian, because that's where I was at that point in my journey.
Mhm.
And people told me he'd be brain damaged.
My gosh.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew that wasn't true, but I didn't have the science behind it. And also there was that
Oh.
voice in my head that went, actually, like, what if you are damaging him? I'm sure you won't, but what
Mm.
if? And that's why I studied nutrition, was so that I could bring him up as a vegetarian and have the right nutrients going into his body. And the more you learn, the more you're like, actually, vegetarian doesn't quite cut it. I want to go to the next step. And it's that process of education. But I think my biggest hurdle was the information that the outside world was feeding me with these lines like, he'll be brain damaged. And as a parent, you're like, I just want to do the best for my children. Um, and so that was a real motive on my journey to understand and to become a nutritionist, and to really embody that, was to show then other people, this is how you do it. You can grow very successful human beings without animal input. Um, so I think that was a really big challenge for me. And then I think, the when you go out or you're traveling, it's quite hard sometimes. Now the world has got so much easier than it used to be. Um, uh, but I think the traveling aspect can be tricky when you're vegan. I was just in Peru, and that was a challenge in some places to
Mm.
find vegan food. When we were hiking to Machu Picchu, there were some places where it was like, well, there's quinoa puffs and maca and not a lot else that I could eat, which isn't going to really sustain you. So luckily I'd brought stuff, and I brought the all you need superfoods mix with me, so I could have that and add that into things to keep my energy levels going and to sustain me. So I think it's that preparation sometimes that is so important, so that you don't get caught out so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Juliette, for sharing your very inspiring story of your vegan journey. And also, it's been a pleasure to have you with us on Why Go Vegan, and your input on the vegan community and your support with all of our Veg Fest events. So, yeah, thank you for your time today, and
Thank
it's
you
been a
so much.
pleasure.
Thank you.